What I'm going to continue is the idea of the kingdom in the Psalms. And I mentioned last week that the early civilization had some kind of account of the flood, the worldwide flood, but the concept of a future kingdom on the earth is unique to the Jewish people. God did not reveal that to any other nation, and nor did he reveal a lot of other things to any other nation, but and he wanted the Jews to be conscious of it, to have this in their minds as to what they were living for and why it was important to follow his commandments, because he had something special planned for those who followed his commandments. And I'm not going to go over all the verses that we went over last week, but I do want to take a look at Psalm 37. We're going to stay in the Psalms for this whole discussion, because as you remember, the Psalms were what they heard when they went to Jerusalem for the feast days, the 3 times per year when they went to Jerusalem, and they had choirs of people singing these psalms, and hopefully they would remember them because they didn't have Bibles in their houses, but if they could remember the singing, it would help them to keep it in their minds. So that's why I think there's so many of them, so much reference to the kingdom in the Psalms. And David wrote some of the Psalms, Asaph wrote some of the Psalms, the sons of Korah wrote some of the Psalms. Different people wrote the Psalms, but every one of them had Psalms where this future age was mentioned. All right, so Psalm 37. I got there. All right, Matthew, read verses 9 to 11, and then Brian, verses 28 and 29.
Psalm 37, verse 9, for evildoers shall be cut off, but those that wait upon the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. For yet a little while, and the wicked shall not be. Yea, thou shalt diligently consider his place, and it shall not be. But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace.
You said 28 and 29.
Yes, sir.
For the Lord loves justice. He will not forsake his saints. They are preserved forever, but the children of the wicked shall be cut off. The righteous shall inherit the land and dwell upon it forever.
All right, so you see there are 3 places in verses 9, 11, and 29, the idea of inheriting the earth. This was not something that Jesus came up with. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. He got it from the Psalms, if not some other places. This is an old concept in their thinking. It's not something that was introduced in the New Testament times. All right, so they're going to inherit the earth. Now go to Psalm 46. And I want to read the whole psalm. All right, Kathy, go ahead.
You're going to read the whole thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, she shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come, behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolations on the earth. He makes war cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress.
All right, so one thing that I don't know that's talked about in detail in the Psalms, but one thing that's talked about in other places is these wars, these nations coming against Jerusalem. Psalms 83 is a popular quoted one, and then Ezekiel 38 and 39, you have groups of nations coming against Jerusalem. But here he says in verse 6, yeah, the heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. He spoke, the earth melted. He spoke, it came to an end. And that's what Israel has that no other nation has, is this, he's behind them. He's behind the land. Verse 9, he makes wars to cease to the end of the earth. So it's not just wars ceasing in Israel, it's wars ceasing throughout the planet. And you know, if you pay any attention to the news at all, you know how prominent, how many wars there are being fought, even now. He breaks the bow, he cuts the spear in sunder, he burns a chariot. Everything that men would use to conduct their wars, he puts an end to. And then in verse 10, be still. You don't have to be anxious when you see wars. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. This is the future of all the turmoil that we see even before us now. All right, any comments on Psalm 46? It was a pretty comprehensive psalm. Okay. All right, so he makes wars to come to an end. Now go to Psalm 98, verse 3. I think we mentioned 98 last week, but I just want to talk about this one verse.
Verse 3. He has remembered his steadfast love and faithfulness to the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth have seen the salvation of our God. Okay,
and then if we kept going with that psalm, it'd be praising God. But I brought this out here because this act or this work that he's going to do to bring these wars to an end, all the earth will see the salvation of God to Israel, just as all the nations in the area saw his power against the Egyptians and how he delivered his people from the strongest nation of the time, the Egyptians. And again, all the world will be aware. I don't know if it's through the current news media or how that's going to work, but it's not something that's going to be just known by Israel and the surrounding nations. This news is going to get out to all the world, that this God of Israel is powerful. All right, so, yes, sir.
You always think about the gray area, or the, not gray area, but the silver lining of technology, right? And how everything that happens at any moment in the world is instantly known almost, especially if it's a big event. We'll think of how technology will play a role in sharing the arrival of Jesus, almost like it'll be real time, because of technology, And I could see that being a way that the whole world would see Christ descending,
I mean, yeah, we're not going to go into the details of that war, but you can see this whole host coming down in Ezekiel 38, and boom, they're killed. It's kind of like, remember the 186,000 Assyrians that died at one moment? It's going to be something like that, the magnitude of the defeat. And it's going to be known that, like that time, it wasn't the Israeli military technology that did it. It was their God, because they're going to be looking pretty in desperate straits when that occurs. Okay, anything else? All right, so now go to Psalm 2. Now, yeah, the world sees it, but not all the world is moved in a good way. Psalm 2, I want to read the whole thing.
Psalm 2. Why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bonds in pieces and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall hold them in derision. Then he shall speak to them in his wrath and distress them in his deep displeasure. Yet I have set my king on my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord has said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will give you the nations for your inheritance and the ends of the earth for your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron. You shall dash them to pieces like a potter's vessel. Now therefore be wise, O kings. Be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and you perish in the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all those who put their trust in him.
All right, so this is talking about after Jesus Christ is sitting on his throne in Jerusalem. And we're going to read how good that is for the earth, that he is on that throne. But as you see in verse 3 and 2, that not everybody's going to be happy with that. They're going to consider it, he's binding us, he's restricting us. We can't do what we want to do. Let's get these cords cut off from us. And it says, oh, you can say that, but the one who sits in the heavens should just laugh at you. And he will speak in his wrath, and they will really suffer the consequences when he speaks in his wrath. Because he's set this king on his holy hill of Zion. So in verse 10, be wise, you kings, be instructed, you judges. Serve the Lord with fear. Kiss the Son, serve his Son, lest he be angry and you perish when his wrath is kindled but a little bit. So that shows how powerful he is. His wrath only has to be kindled a tiny bit, and he can just cause people to perish from the earth. A very instructive psalm about the condition of the earth once Jesus becomes king. Any comments on that? Roger.
I just think is really fascinating, this 12th verse of David's recognition of the Son that's going to sit on the throne. Of course, we know that God gave him the promises that, one out of his own lineage would sit on his throne. But it is such a powerful thing. I mean, that verse 12, kiss the Son lest he be angry and you perish. So that recognizing that Son that's going to sit there, how critical that is. And people are very caught up in politics and wars and patriotism and things of that nature, but all of those things are going to fail and dissolve. And they need to change their political stance to be with Christ, because their nations are falling, or there'll be a price to pay for it. I just think it's a very strong thing to say, kiss the Son lest he be angry. It's powerful to me.
They need to change their view of their own wisdom. because there are going to be those who are not happy that he is king. That's hard to believe because of the next psalm we're going to look at, which is Psalm 72. I want to really look closely at this psalm because it talks about the beauty of having him as king. So I know we closed last Sunday looking at this psalm, but we didn't get to discuss it. So next reader, Psalm 72, you can split it up because it's got 20 verses in there.
Psalm 72. Give the king your justice, O God, and your righteousness to the royal son. May he judge your people with righteousness and your poor with justice. Let the mountains bear prosperity for the people, and the hills in righteousness. May he defend the cause of the poor of the people, give deliverance to the children of the needy, and crush the oppressor. May they fear you while the sun endures, and as long as the moon through all generations. May he be like the rain that falls on the mown grass, like showers that water the earth. In his days may the righteous flourish, and peace abound till the moon be no more. May he have dominion from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. May desert tribes bow down before him, and his enemies lick the dust. May the kings of Tarshish and of the coastlands render him tribute. May the kings of Sheba and Seba bring gifts.
Yea, all the kings shall fall down before him, all nations shall serve him. For he shall deliver the needy when he crieth, the poor also, and him that hath no helper. He shall spare the poor and needy, and shall save the souls of the needy. He shall redeem their soul from deceit and violence, and precious shall their blood be in his sight. And he shall live, and to him shall be given of the gold of Sheba, where also shall be made for him continually, and daily shall he be praised. There shall be an handful of corn in the earth upon the top of the mountains. The fruit thereof shall shake like Lebanon, and they of the city shall flourish like grass of the earth. His name shall endure forever. His name shall be continued as long as the sun, and men shall be blessed in him. All nations shall call him blessed. Blessed be the Lord God, the God of Israel, who only doeth wondrous things. And blessed be his glorious name forever. And let the whole earth be filled with his glory. Amen and amen. The prayers of David, the son of Jesse, are ended.
All right, my version says at the beginning, it's a psalm for Solomon, who is David appointed to be the king following him. Did this occur in the days of Solomon? I'm getting some yeses and some nos.
Sheba came and visited him and brought an amazing amount of wealth to him. It did happen in his lifetime. See that word there.
Yeah, to some extent, Rob, you said no, I think. To some extent, it did occur in the days of Solomon. This peace did occur while Solomon was king. Israel didn't have wars until the end of Solomon's reign. Martha, was your hand up? No? Okay. I thought I saw your hand go up. Okay. So I want to just go through this kind of slowly to try to absorb everything that is brought out in this psalm. Verse 2, he shall judge your people with righteousness, something that Israel and certainly the other nations rarely experienced, was a king who actually ruled righteously. And thy poor with judgment, thy poor with the wisdom of God. They were the ones who normally got the worst end of the deal, was the poor. The mountains shall bring peace, in verse 3. A peace throughout the world. And it will come about, this peace will come about through righteousness. He will judge the poor, he will save the children of the needy, and he'll break in pieces the oppressor. There was a lot of oppression back then, there's a lot of oppression now. We may not experience in this country the worst of it, but there are many people on the earth who are subject to high levels of oppression in their daily lives. And that's going to come to an end under his rule. They'll fear him as long as the sun and moon endure. Throughout all generations, he will be respected generation after generation after generation because of his rulership. It will be refreshing, in verse 6, it will be refreshing to the earth to have his righteous rule, his righteous laws, where, I'm sorry, Jason, your hand's up, go ahead.
Whenever I think about Solomon and his kingdom that followed after David, I'm always drawn to the fact that it's a type, a shadow of the kingdom that will be under the greater David, the greater son of David. And so when you take a look at David's proclamations about Solomon and his kingdom, there will always be echoes of what Solomon is, a pale comparison of for Christ, because Christ is the one truly who will reign forever as long as the sun endures and as long as there is a moon. So that when you have depictions here, and we all raise our hand, we say, is this referring to Solomon, or is this referring to Jesus? Was this fulfilled in Solomon's lifetime? And you have to answer yes, but with a greater fulfillment that's going to come later, where those things that don't quite click.
Okay, Martha has her hand up this time.
A little of each. Because there's so many echoes with things like this. So when it talks about he shall judge thy people with righteousness, sort of takes us to Micah 3, that he shall judge among the many people. But then there's a part that has to be fulfilled first, the rebuke of strong nations and beating their swords into plowshares, etc. And one really beautiful verse that goes with this in Isaiah 32, 16 and 17, when it talks about judgment shall dwell in the wilderness and righteousness remain in the unfruitful field. And the work of righteousness shall be peace, and the effect of righteousness, quietness and assurance forever. So that's truly future.
All right, David, of course, knew that his son Solomon would not live forever. But what was David told in connection with all of these things that were seen in Psalm 72? What was he told in connection, and you probably have to read my mind to some degree, but what was he told in connection with these beautiful concepts of Psalm 72, although he knew that Solomon wasn't going to live forever? Okay, keep going.
Davidic prophecy, basically from Samuel, which, like Martha was saying, it had that present and future application about, David's literal son, taking the throne, and then down the road, Jesus would be the one who would ultimately take that throne, and the terms forever are again used, right?
All right, Rob.
I think I parsed it. That's what I'm getting.
This is for you, Rob.
David would be there. He would see it.
Yeah.
And he didn't see this in Solomon's time. He was already dead by that point in time.
The answer I was looking for, Rob, was that David was told as long as his descendants obeyed God, they would see these kinds of things. And the problem was that they stopped obeying God, even Solomon, after a while. So that's why a lot of these things did not continue in the reign of Israel, because they didn't follow. But as y'all were saying, Jesus will do these things. He will follow the ways of God as king. And as a result, all these things will occur for long periods of time. The peace that Martha spoke of, and everything here. Okay, any other comments before I keep going? Okay, go ahead.
Or that David's line wouldn't continue to obey is actually in that promise that he made to David, where he says, I will be his father and he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men. And that's what David's descendants ended up doing. They committed iniquity, and yes, he had to discipline them. But the greater son of David's not going to do that.
And all these blessings will come about, will continue, because he's not going to disobey. All right. Verse 8, he will have dominion from sea to sea, from the rivers to the ends of the earth. Now, in David's time, what was David's concept of the ends of the earth? A little bit further than that.
To the Euphrates, and from Egypt up to, what was the northern portion of it?
Yeah, that was the extent of David's kingdom. But remember, the Phoenicians were trading at that time. So his view of the earth, I think, was a little more than the boundaries of his kingdom, both to the west and to the east. They had the traders going and bringing back these goods from other lands. But it certainly wasn't North America. It certainly wasn't South America. It probably wasn't Eastern Asia. It wasn't nearly the vastness that we think of all the nations of the earth today, the ends of the earth today. They that dwell in the wilderness shall bow before him. His enemies shall lick the dust. His enemies will be put to an end forever. In spite of what you read in Psalm 2, where they say, we're tired of these restrictions, they're going to be made to subject to him. Like was brought out about the days of Solomon, kings did bring presents to Solomon. The kings will bring presents to Jesus. The kings of Sheba and Seba shall offer gifts. All kings shall bow before him. All nations will serve him. So all the ends of the earth, the farthest away from Israel you can think, they're going to all be subject to him. And he will deliver the poor, he will deliver the needy, he will spare the poor, he will redeem their soul from deceit and violence. Precious shall their blood be in his sight. To him shall be given prayers. Daily shall he be praised. Whoever read 16, it was Mary. Mary read just what the King James said, a handful of corn in the earth. My footnote says it means there will be an abundance of corn even in the mountains. So the earth will be plentiful. There will be plenty of food. Roger, you want to say something?
We were talking about, that there will be resistance. We have that verse that says that the warning that if those who will not come to Jerusalem, on them no rain will fall. So we're already told there's going to be resistance. People are, and they're going to struggle for it. They're going to lose their crops and everything else. So there's going to be this period. How many years it'll take to get them all under that umbrella, we don't know. I'm sure it'll probably take several decades at least, but before people can get it in their heads that they need to serve Christ and abandon their governments and things of that nature. But anyway, we're talking about resistance, and I just wanted to bring that verse up before we got too far away from it.
That's true. That's good. Oh, Jacob, go ahead.
I was just thinking, why would people want to rebel against God, and it kind of makes sense because we see that now. We see where people have been very content, very happy to live a life that is not dedicated to God, and being told that they will have to stop doing what they've been doing now for the past couple decades, if not longer, and changing. No one likes to change. No one likes to say what I'm doing is wrong and therefore I need to stop doing it. It's a very hard problem for us to actually get past that. And so if you have an entire world who's been told, yeah, no, the way your life is no longer good, the way you've been living is no longer the way you should be living it, it's very easy to see why people would want to reject that message.
And what's Jacob, what's the bottom line as to why people want to make their own decisions? Pride, right. All right, Rob, you're next.
Going along with that, you know, Israel's lowest times when it said every man did what was right in his own eyes. And I think this country especially, and others, everybody is trying to move towards doing what is right in their own eyes, to where evil is good and good becomes evil and things of that nature. And that mindset isn't a light switch that you can just, oh, I get it. I got to serve Christ. And once you've known that way of life, that's really hard emotionally. And pride is one thing, to turn that switch off and humble yourself. And this country will struggle greatly for that, I'm sure.
All right, Rob is next.
I just had kind of a question, like, well, one comment, it says his enemies will lick the dust. I think that's a good correlation to, you know, sin, you know, because of the sin that's placed upon the serpent in the garden, right? So that's pretty obvious, I think. But so my question is there, I guess, would there be three groups of people: those who are looking for the return of Christ, those who are the enemies of Christ, and those who are indifferent?
I wouldn't say indifferent, I would say thankful.
Yeah.
That's what, when you read, his name shall be praised, people will be giving thanks for him. That's not indifference. That is, their lives are a lot better.
Well, not indifferent. So I guess I'm more describing their position upon his arrival.
Okay.
So there's some who are clearly the enemies of Christ, and then there's others who, like those who dwell in the wilderness, will bow before him. Does that mean those people that dwell in the wilderness are evil and going to be subjected through, you know, physical suppression to bow before him? Or does that mean they're going to see him and choose to bow before him because they realize who he is, or come to understand it? You know, I get it may not be something we can answer, but it's, you know, it does. I don't think it's black and white. Yeah, go ahead.
I have an answer. I didn't know if Jason was going to try to answer or not. If you have something else.
Where there is no vision, the people perish. But the better translation is, when you don't see what God is and what he is doing, you will cast off restraint. Right? So when you cast off restraint, you say, there is no reason for what I am doing good, right? So you do evil instead. You service the desires of your heart because you don't have the same vision that God has.
Yeah, I would say, when it talks about the people in the wilderness, it's the ones in the faraway places. It's not just in the urban centers. It's in the desolate places too. They're going to bow down before him too. They're going to be aware of it too. All right, Jacob, go ahead.
Yeah, and you know, in addition to half of the world that lives free enough to be able to make individual decisions, we've got another half of the world that lives in dictatorship.
Yeah, oppressed.
And
yeah.
they are truly in the wilderness. They've never even, some have never even heard the name Jesus, let alone have any clue about what. This is going to be an amazing shock to them. And can imagine their thankfulness to at some stage have that dictatorship lifted, removed, so they are truly free to be able to worship Jesus.
They're going to be thankful. They're going to praise him. They're going to bless him. Yes. Don't forget, it's not everybody going to rebel. John, your hand up. Somebody's hand over here. I thought it was on this side of the room.
so we can see the larger pattern that will be there. There will be the religions of the world who will not accept the fact that a Jew will rule over them. The Arab populations, the idol worshippers, even vast majority of Christians who will not see him as the person they should serve. And so they will reject that. It's also interesting as we talk about wilderness and the people in the wilderness, we remember the echo of how the children of Israel were forced to wander in the wilderness, and there they perished because of their lack of faithfulness. So we might want to keep in mind that so many people who are now currently in the wilderness do not yet have a hope or insight into that hope, which is what we hope as the first part of the kingdom begins, we will bring some of that hope to some of those people. They might see and understand what it's about. So that's what comes to my mind.
I think Roger had his hand up.
Martha read about there'll be quiet. I thought that was really good because when we watch the news today with what's going on in Ukraine, and you look at their fields, their crops, they're full of craters from bombs going off every day and people shooting into it. Imagine someone coming along who silenced all that. Even if you weren't even sure who he was, you can imagine the stress that's been on them as these things rain down on them almost daily around the world. We can't watch the news without seeing at least one explosion being recorded of something in some city or something. So there's going to be a lot of people who are in that middle area who don't know him, but he stopped the reign of terror that was coming down upon their heads. And they'll be easily converted, I'm sure. But the ones that were shooting the shells would probably be the harder ones to convince. So anyway, the verse about making quiet, I thought that would fit very well with what we see on.
John's got his hand up.
I don't know how relevant this is, but it's just a personal thing. When I read Psalm 72, especially verse 11, it says, "Yea, all kings shall fall down before him. All nations shall serve him." It puts me in mind of our hymn, Hills of the North, where it talks about regions of the world, regions of the globe, and areas that have traditionally not been Christian or even aware, really, without missionaries and other people going to those places. Entire sections of the globe that have historically not embraced this idea of a Messiah and it being Jesus and God having a plan and a purpose. And those people who historically have generation after generation after generation for thousands of years not embrace the Lord, turning to him, and what a amazing thing that will be.
And I don't think they're going to understand him completely when he comes to the throne. They're just going to see that this man's got power, this man's got authority. He can subdue the nations. Through him, we're getting a lot of blessings. We're getting enough food. We're getting enough water. We've gotten rid of our oppressors. And he's ruling with kindness, with righteousness. And we're a whole lot better with him. And then with time, they'll come to learn who he really is. But it's just, he's going to be praised. I mean, we always think about people going to reject him and stuff. But there's going to be a lot of people on the earth who are going to be so glad to have his kind of reign in the earth. So I don't know if I'll be teaching next week or not. If I am, then what we were going to do is look at parallel verses to everything we covered under the concept of Mount Zion, which is synonymous with everything we've been saying. So thank you for your discussion. Thank you for your attention.